This is the last biceps video that you will ever need to watch. We will work our way through every single piece of information that you need to know to get that beefy biceps. There are 3 types of biceps exercises that you need to include in your biceps workout if you want to get the biggest arms possible. These 3 types of exercises are the main bicep curl, a curl variation that targets the brachialis and brachioradialis, and the curl variation that targets the peak of your biceps. Let me explain what all of that means and which exercises you should use for each variation. So first of all, what do I mean by the main bicep curl? Well, it means that you use an exercise like the barbell curl or the dumbbell curl and treat it as if it was a compound lift for the biceps. More on that later. The next exercise type is a curl that focuses on the brachialis and brachioradialis. I think that it's pretty self-explanatory. You need a curl of this type if you want your arms to look as big as possible. Because this is how your hand looks like without a well-developed brachialis and brachioradialis, and this is how it looks with well-developed brachialis and brachioradialis. And as you can see, the difference is pretty big. So the exercises that I recommend are, for example, a hammer curl of any kind or any curl with overhand grip. Next we have the exercises that target the peak. And yes, that's exactly what they do. The exercises that do the best job at targeting the peak are, in my opinion, the preacher curl and the concentration curl. Okay, now let's take a look at how many workouts and how many sets you should do per week, and also what kind of rep range you should use. You already know what I'm going to say. 2 to 3 workouts per week is ideal. But could you theoretically hit your biceps 4 times per week? Yes, you could if you programmed it in a way that makes sense. But just keep in mind that more is not always better. So I would just recommend sticking with 2 to 3 workouts per week. And for the number of sets, I would recommend roughly 12 to 20 sets per week. Can you go over 20 sets per week? Yes you can, but I don't think it's needed. Because if you feel like your biceps are not getting worked with 20 sets per week, you are most likely just mindlessly going through the motions and not pushing yourself hard enough. So instead of adding more sets, try to improve the quality of the sets that you are already doing. Alright, before we get into the rep ranges, let me show you why you need to split your exercises into one main exercise and 2 secondary exercises. If you do that, everything will become much easier to keep track of, while also making sure that you hit your biceps from all the angles necessary, and also benefiting from all the useful rep ranges. So let's take a look at the main exercise first. You will always do the main exercise as the first exercise for the biceps in each workout. Because I already mentioned the main bicep curl before, you already know that we will be using this type of exercise for this purpose. And obviously, because it's the first exercise of the workout for the biceps, we will have the most strength available. That's why the rep range for the main exercise will be on the lower end, so 5 to 12 reps. As for some other body parts we did in the past, you can just choose between 5 to 8 and 8 to 12 rep range. Just pick the one which sounds more appealing to you. Both are great. So as I mentioned before, the main exercise for the biceps will either be the barbell or the dumbbell curl. I would highly recommend the barbell variation over the dumbbell one though. If you are having problems with the barbell because it hurts your wrists or something like that, try switching to an easy bar. That will most likely resolve your problem. You will quickly realize that when you start treating one of your biceps exercises as a compound lift, your biceps will improve dramatically. The main biceps exercise will most likely be present in every single one of your workout days that you train your biceps on. But that's not the case for both of the secondary exercises. So let's check them out. So as I said before, we have 2 types of secondary exercises. The first type is the brachialis and brachioradialis focused curl, and the second one is the peak focused curl. These exercises will always be done after the main biceps exercise, which means that we will be a little bit weaker after that. That's why we will be using a rep range that is a little bit higher than on the main exercise. For the secondary exercises, I would mostly recommend the 12 to 15 rep range. But you can go up to 30 reps if you want to, but that mainly depends on your preference and on the type of the exercise that you are doing. For example, I really like using the 12 to 15 rep range on the preacher curl, but I don't like this rep range on the concentration curl, where it feels much better when I go over 20 reps. Do I have an explanation for why this is the case? Not really, it's just preference. And as you get more experienced, you will also create your own preferences. So it's always important to listen to your body and adapt accordingly. But that's kind of the beauty of bodybuilding. You get to know your body better and explore what works for you in particular. Okay, let's go back to the secondary exercises. You might be wondering, why do we have 2 types of secondary exercises? Why can't we just bundle it all into one thing? And the answer is pretty simple. We will be rotating between them in each workout. That's why they are split into two types. So you can imagine that the main exercise is a constant that doesn't change, and we just switch between the two secondary exercises, from the brachialis and brachioradialis focused curl to the peak focused curl. And we just repeat that cycle every week. So this is how it could look, for example. And if you want to do 3 biceps exercises in each workout, just put in both of the secondary exercises there at once. If you do that, you will not need to switch around anything. If you set up all of this properly, you will give your biceps everything that it needs to become huge. All you need to focus on now is training. And speaking of training, there is always people complaining about the size of their biceps. And the first thing they blame it on is genetics, but most of the time that is simply just not true. If you are struggling with the size of your biceps, here is exactly what you need to do. Imagine that you are, for example, doing the push-pull leg split. And let me just guess, what is the last exercise of your pull workout? Let me think. Is it bicep curl? Oh, I was right, wasn't I? Well, it doesn't necessarily mean that's wrong, but if you feel like that your biceps is not growing, this should be one of the first things that you should change. I want you to remember how tired you feel every time that your workout is nearing its end. Yes, exactly. You are pretty messed up at that point, and that's both physically and mentally. Which means that your biceps is tired from all the other pulling exercises you did before that. And you can't even properly have your head in the game because you just can't focus anymore. So the solution is very simple. Put your biceps exercises first in your workout, or at least in the middle of your workout, not at the absolute end. If you do that, you can train your biceps while your strength and focus is still at its peak. You might think that it can't be that much of a difference, but I want you to give that a try, and you will immediately feel the difference between training the biceps first versus training it last. And of course, if you train your biceps first, then something else will have to be done last. You simply can't prioritize everything at once. That's the reality. If we use the push-pull legs example again, and we put biceps as the first exercise, that would automatically mean that you will be doing your back exercises after the biceps exercises. And as we all know, back exercises also use biceps to a certain degree, which means that your back exercises might suffer a little bit as a result of that change. But as I said earlier, you simply can't prioritize everything at once. So it's up to you to decide what you want to prioritize. But if you have been lifting for years and all those years were spent with the biceps being the last exercise of your workout, and your biceps are still lagging behind the rest of your physique, then I think it's a really simple decision. Well, that's all you need to know about training biceps. And if you want to learn more about bodybuilding, check out my website where I have tons of free resources prepared for you that will simplify your bodybuilding journey. So what are you waiting for? It's just that simple. And as always, a big thanks to all the supporters on my Patreon. Did you like this video? Then you will for sure like this one too.